You know, the shadow that hovers over all of these manifestations of terror, be it Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis, is the Muslim Brotherhood, which you and I have both written about. And I think this president is going to go down Mount Rushmore worthy as one of the greatest presidents we've ever had, maybe the greatest president in our lifetime, with a that boy or a tip of the cap to Ronald Reagan as well. But I have to say, there's one thing that is a little disappointing to me, and I'm hoping you can clarify things for me, and that is the Muslim Brotherhood, which I talk about, which is kind of like the ideological foundation for all of these terrorist groups. They are a financial network, they are a militant network as well throughout the region. They have not yet been outlawed by the United States, even though, or labeled a terrorist operation and organization by the United States, even though many of the very same allies that you have mentioned, the UAE, Jordan, Egypt, even Russia, have outlawed them or said that they cannot operate in their country legally. Jordan has done the same. What do you think the holdup or hesitation is? I mean, we just saw the administration label Antifa a terrorist operation, and they should be. But I don't think Antifa is nearly the history and the quantitative, tangible dangers to Western civilization that the Muslim Brotherhood has.
Well, I think they're making progress, but the problem is that you're absolutely right. They are the fountainhead of Hamas, of Hezbollah, all of these movements, al-Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, the old PLA. But they function on the principle of deniability of culpability. They try to mainstream, and I mean that literally. In 2012, the Obama administration helped really engineer the election of Mohammed Morsi in Egypt,
Yes.
and he was a Muslim Brotherhood front, and then he had a whole cadre of Muslim Brotherhood people who actually were in the White House in 2012. He invited them, they visited, he mainstreamed them. The Turkish he told us that Turkey approved of the Muslim Brotherhood and he could call Erdogan anytime. He was his conduit to Middle East problems. And so all of that legacy has to be undone, and they have to be rebranded as the terrorist fountainhead they are. And that's going to, and once you declare them terrorist organization, then you're going to have to deal with their, I mean, the radical Islamic communities in Michigan or in Washington, D.C. or New York in the United States, they're very careful that they don't publicly endorse maybe Mr. Zoran Madami has with the unindicted co-conspiracy, but they try to keep away from ISIS or Islamic Jihad or the more toxic brands, but they have Muslim Brotherhood contacts in those communities. And if you were to declare them, and I think we should, a terrorist organization, then we would really have to draw a red line to American Muslims who donate to those Muslim Brotherhood entities or fronts.
Well, yeah, they hide under charities.
Yeah, they do. They do. And so I think that because of the electoral college importance, as we saw in the last election of states like Michigan, where the Biden administration suspended military shipments to Israel temporarily in hopes that they could win over the 250,000 swing voters in Michigan that identified as Muslim, that they have been given a degree of exemption that they don't warrant. And I think the Trump administration is going to finally see that if they want this agreement to hold, they have to deal with Hamas. And that means eliminate it, get it out of there, scatter it to the winds. And that means ultimately the organization, the ideology that sprouts these seeds of terror, they have to deal with that. And
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned Mandami's name. I would be remiss if I did not take a chance to pick at your brilliance and find out what fundamental strategic challenge does it face the entire United States, and I would argue the Middle East as well, to have a Mandami like or a Mandami who I would say is a Morrissey like individual leading our most important media, financial, cultural city in the United States and in the Western world.
Well, it has a lot of unfortunate ramifications. If you're a member of the Saudi government or the Jordanian government and you've tried to emasculate radical Islam, and people in the popular street, the Arab or Muslim street, tell you, well, wait a minute, why are you picking on us, or why are you trying to eliminate these groups when an American citizen just posed with an unindicted co-conspirator who was the brainchild of the First World Trade? So if the financial capital of the world, the mayor that emblemizes that, has one of the most radical imams in the world and his arm around him, and he's now in control of the financial center of the world, do you really think we're going to listen to you tell us that we can't flirt with radical Islam when this person is? And that's one thing in the geostrategic sense, but there's always already been 1 million Jewish Americans in the last 20 years who've left New York, mostly for
Wow,
Florida.
I did not know that.
Yes, there have been. And it's down to, I think, 16 to 18% of the population. And if he is elected, and I think he will be, you're going to see a lot of Jewish Americans go to Palm Beach, Miami, Naples, just to get out of New York. And that's going to be a lot of capital that leaves. And that will only radicalize him more, Mondami, because he won't have that constituency to deal with. Then there's another issue that when you study the formation of the Bolsheviks in 1917, their victory, or what happened in Cuba in 1959, or with Chavez and Maduro, there's a pattern where these communists masquerading as socialists, in their ascent, they go to capitalists. It's what Marx said, they'll give you the rope to hang themselves. That they say and he is doing that now. He's going to Wall Street firms and saying, look, I'm not as bad as everybody says. If you stay quiet, or if you fund me, or if you work with me, I will give you contracts. I will give you exemptions. I will not go over. And I think if that happens, you'll have people from the inside working with him, and that will either even further discredit and divide the financial community in New York. And I think there's a lot of
That is a
people that I've talked.
frightening. That
Yeah,
is a frightening, frightening picture. It's
yes, it
not like
is.
New York was booming economically, culturally, civically before Mandami. It was on its way down. We have lost. You talked about the number of Jews that have left. There are a number of other working class and rich and upper middle class New Yorkers that have fled the city as well, because of quality of
Yeah.
life issues, because of economic issues, affordability, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Victor, in the few minutes that we have left with you, let us dive into a what seems to be just as difficult crisis that President Trump thought would be easier, and that, of course, is Russia's war on Ukraine and the absolute obstinance of Vladimir Putin, who I have to really say, Victor, he it doesn't make sense to me what he's been doing over the last year, where President Trump has been going out of his way to accommodate, or at least give the illusion that he's accommodating many of Putin's demands. What do you see for the future of that crisis?
I think Putin is actually, although he has advantages on the battlefield that reflect his greater GDP, territory, population, he's in a doom loop. And I think what Trump thought was, if he allowed Putin to hang on to the territory that he has taken to the west of Donbass and Crimea, and he could convince Zelensky, then he could say to the world, well, Ukraine will not be in NATO. I don't think they were ever going to be in NATO, by the way, but he could say, I institutionalize that. And then whether we like it or not, the Donbass and the Crimea, Ukraine does not have the wherewithal to take those back. And so we're going to institutionalize that. And then I think Putin basically said to him, I have lost 1.5 million dead, wounded, and missing. This is an ungodly disaster for me politically. And I have oligarchs to deal with. I have the military apparat to deal with, and they're very unhappy. The economy is in a tank. We're facing these oil embargoes. We've lost all these young kids, and I don't have enough to show for it. And 175 to 100 miles west of the Donbass and Crimea and getting them out, that's not enough for me. So I want to push, push, push to the west. I don't know where, at some magical line, whether that's 50 miles more, 100 miles, one-third of Ukraine, he thinks he can take that back to the people that he's afraid of and say, look, I've got a third of Ukraine. I've got a fourth of Ukraine. I added to the territory. Now we have a DMZ. We can reformulate and try it again in 5 years, something like that. And he's scared, and they're saying to him, you lost all these people. You didn't get very much territory. We're not much better off than we were. We've got some very powerful new NATO enemies. Sweden is in NATO. They've got a wonderful arms industry, aircraft industry. They got Finland, and we fought them in 39, 40. They're fierce warriors. They've got the best artillery per capita in the world. NATO's stronger than ever. That's not enough, Vladimir. And so I think that's the sticking point. And Trump, I don't think, saw that. And I think he does. He says it's a waste of time to talk to him, because when he says you can have the territory you've already had, I think he thinks he can convince Zelensky of that. But he's not going to be able to convince Putin, because Putin, I think, has been told, you
Status
created,
quo is not enough.
that's not enough. And he's afraid of the people who, we think he's almighty and he has all the power, but no dictator does. It's always dependent upon the ruling classes of the people with the money, with the military, the guns. And so I think that he's terrified, and he's trying to beg and threaten and cajole. And the question is now, there's only really two ways to stop him. You either have to, and that's hard for the MAGA base, is you're going to have to say, well, we're going to give you more material and better weapons and tomahawks. And yet the more money you give him, give Ukraine to stop they're going to have to do what classical strategy dictates, and that is hit the depots, hit the supply chains, hit the oil. Once you do that, then you're getting into a very iffy territory. We had, during the Cold War, sort of an unwritten rule we don't talk about, but in rivalry between the two nuclear superpowers, the rule was that in proxy wars, they do not use their proxy to attack the homeland of their rival. So they were always in Vietnam or Korea, but we did not attack, when we were in Korea, Russia. We didn't even attack China. When they were in Vietnam, they used proxies to attack our soldiers, but they didn't attack us. The only time that rule was almost broken was in 1961, when Kennedy found out that Khrushchev was putting nuclear-tipped missiles in Cuba and using Cuba as a proxy to attack or threaten the United States with and that was we went to DEFCON. I think we went to DEFCON.
That was the highest level of DEFCON I believe we've ever been.
Yes, and we said that is intolerable. And so if we arm them with tomahawks that have this 1,800-mile range, and they start attacking what is logical and legitimate in a war, but they start attacking the infrastructure and the oil industry and the grid of Russia, then Russia's going to say to us, you're arming a proxy to attack our homeland, and we don't do that with you. We didn't do it in Iraq. We supplied Iran to attack your soldiers, and we didn't do it in Afghanistan. We supplied the Taliban to hurt you, but we did not supply a proxy in Mexico or Venezuela. And I don't think our foreign policy establishment, because he's so evil and he's in the wrong and we want to stop him, but that's not the only strategic consideration we have to make for our own security. And so I think that's what Trump is struggling with. And he's got two forces that they can't be reconciled. And that is, if you want to stop Putin now from getting any more territory and humiliate him, you've got to give them these types of weapons. But the types of weapons that you're going to give him to do that violate certain protocols of the last 60
And
or 70 years.
it brings it much closer to a direct Russia United States,
Yes.
which is what we all don't want.
Yes.
Speaking of that, in the last 2 minutes that we have, we're wrapping up soon. What do you make of Putin's aerial incursions into NATO territory countries? I think Poland was one of the countries. I believe there was another NATO country that, do you think that was just a mistake?
No, 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 I don't think anything's a mistake. I think there's a couple of reasons. I think he's going in there deliberately to frontline states, Poland, Czech, Hungary, maybe Danish airways, but more likely Scandinavian. He's gone in there, and he's also by sea. He's gone into their territorial wall, and I think he's telling the Western Europeans, you really know what you got yourself into way over here in the east. This is our region. Where this was the old Warsaw Pact, and if we have a fight, do you really want to give up your cappuccino in Rome or Amsterdam and go over there? Because we're going to keep pressing these places, and under your Article 5, you people in France and Belgium and Italy and Spain, you're obligated to come over here. So I think he's just trying to test and tear at the seams of NATO unity, and then of course he wants to see how they react, and they scramble planes very quickly, but he was hoping that they might just, you know, Poland or Hungary or Finland or Sweden might say to Brussels, the NATO headquarters, hey, you guys, let's just calm down. You don't understand. We're on the front lines. And if anything goes wrong, it's not going to be you. We're the buffer, as we were in the Cold War, between you and the Russians. And you're putting us into a lot of exposure. And then maybe they would deal with Putin and say, please don't do that. I
But
think he's wrong. I
am
think
I
he's
right in
wrong.
saying,
He's
am I
wrong
right
in
in
a lot.
saying that he got exactly the opposite reaction of
Yes,
what he was hoping?
I think absolutely right. He's got when Trump came in the first term, 16 countries had not made their 2%. I think it's down to 5 now. They've all promised to go to 5% of GDP on defense. They make very good weapons. They're starting to rearm. They're starting to close their borders. They've got, as I said earlier, these new, really reliable, and they've already spent they're up to about 3%, the Swedes, the Finns, and the Greeks are now up to 2. So he has energized NATO, and more importantly, no one is saying that Donald Trump doesn't like NATO, wants to. He's been the best thing that ever happened to NATO, and there's no distance between him and NATO now. And that
Yeah,
was
the
what,
funny thing is, it seems like Trump is closer to NATO and vice versa. NATO closer to Trump than even during the Reagan era when I was in high
yes,
school, and
I
the
think it is.
Europeans were
Yes,
marching in the streets against us deploying high-level military to
yes. And I
conflict.
think that's because they're terrified of the Russians, and they were terrified that in the past that Obama, but particularly Biden, wouldn't do anything to help them in extremis. And now they think whatever Trump is, he's unpredictable. Nobody knows what he would do to Putin, but whatever it is, he will act. And when he says he's going to bomb Iran, he bombed Iran.
Absolutely,
And
indeed.
that's not like Biden saying, "Hey, Vladimir, knock off. If you're going to hack our institutions, please don't hack, hospitals. Or if you're going to invade, make sure." It depends on whether it's minor or not. And so the Europeans can, in public, they can say they like the American left, they love Biden, they loved Obama, but deep down inside, they are relieved that Trump is president.
Indeed. Well, on that very positive note, Victor, we could go for 2 hours. It's always a pleasure talking to you or talking with you and learning from you. This ends another episode of Niger Innis Presents the Trump Revolution, a part of the TvAbraham Network. And Victor, I'm going to end like I always do. My father giving me advice, Niger, when you go through life, make sure that you have the principles of TLC. And no, I don't mean tender love and care. I mean truth, logic, and courage. And that's the foundation of Niger Innis Presents the Trump Revolution. In fact, it's the foundation of the entire TV Abraham network. Thank you so much, my dear friend Victor. We
Thank
hope
you.
to have you on again soon.
Me too. Thank you, Niger.
All the best. Bye now.
Bye.